for you too, were you in that whole process of doing a lot of auditions, not quite getting there, and dealing with rejection in a sense? And so do you have any advice for young actors who have to just get through that period?
Oh God. You know, the one thing I would wish for every young actor is to be able to sit on the other side of the audition process, which I've been fortunate enough to do now a few times, mainly through Outlander, because it's so it's such a painful process. Sometimes it can also be an amazing process. You know, you actually get to work on something, you get to bring it in, you get to present your work. My one big thing was be off book, know your material, you know, so that when you're in that room, if the casting director asks you to do it this way or that way or shifts it up, then you're not locked into looking down at your page. You're free and you're able to kind of just, you know, do whatever they want. But, you know, 9 times out of 10, you will do a great job, but you just might not be right for the role. And that's the thing. It's not you, it's not your talent, it's not, you know, the work that you've put in. It's an essence that just might not be there, that doesn't match the character. And, you know, so often, you know, I've been part of the process for other characters in Outlander when I've been able to, you know, sit in on these auditions, and people will come in and they'll do the most amazing work, but they just don't feel like that character. And so it can be, you know, it's hard to explain to somebody who's really trying hard, and, you know, how do you change that? You can't, you know, it's out of your control. And I think that you have to allow yourself to be okay with that, you know, that you're not going to be able to control certain elements of things. What you can control is your work, and, you know, how much you prepare, being, you know, off book, being on time, you know, if it's the car. And I always think it's, you know, people need a little help with their imagination as well. I think, you know, we would think that, you know, casting directors and directors and all of that, they can see you as a blank canvas and they can imagine you in any scenario. But without going in full costume to an audition, I think it's best to give a subtle nod to something that, you know, if you're doing a period piece, you don't have to go in period costume, because then that looks maybe a little, but wear something that sort of gives a vibe of that period, or those kind of things. I don't know. It's just it can be such a painful process. And I, you know, many times I've walked out of auditions crying, sat in my car, tears, you know.
Well, you see, this is all good to know in terms of, and it seems to be the journey that most actors have to go through, and thankfully you come out the other side. But for you, obviously, yes, you did a few more smaller parts like that before landing the big one, your first major role, which was in Outlander in 2014. So, you know, obviously there was a couple of years of hard work, and then it happened for you, and it was based on, obviously, Outlander, based on the book by Diana Gabald, and your character Claire Randall is a time traveler and World War II nurse, and she's playing opposite Sam Heughan. Is that how you pronounce that name?
Yeah, Sam Heughan.
Yeah, playing Jamie, your partner, and later your husband, and all of that. So just when you're talking about casting directors there, in a sense, if you think about the casting directors at the time for Outlander, yes, they thought you fit the part, but they needed to do a chemistry test for you with Sam Heughan, and so what was that like? That was a whole different, you know, ball game now, in terms of knowing that you're right for the part, but obviously it's down to how you fit on screen, because obviously the whole drama hangs around these two characters. So that was really important. And so what was that test like? And was the creator, you know, the legendary showrunner, Ronald Moore, was he in the room at the time?
Ron wasn't in the room, but Meryl Davis, who's one of our executive producers, was there, and Ira Bear, who was one of our original writers. It's funny, that test, I broke one of my own rules. I remember I was running late because there was all this traffic works on, or there was road works on Washington, and it was in Culver City. So I remember I was, just so frustrated trying to get to the place on time, you know, and I was stuck in this bloody roadworks. And so I arrived in and I was like sweaty, and which in a way, you know, it didn't give me time to be nervous about, you know, because I think if I was sitting outside the room and thinking about what I'm going to do and all of that, sometimes, you know, you get too nervous. But so I sort of like breezed into the room and was like trying to pat myself down with tissue because I was just so sweaty. Um, but yeah, I mean that was a really amazing, you know, audition process, because Sam is obviously, now I know this, but he's just one of the nicest guys, and he was just such a like calm influence in the room, and he was just sort of standing there, and we started chatting about Scotland. I have a lot of friends who live there and stuff, and we just got into the scene, and we both really went for it. You know, there was one big fight scene that we had to do, and I remember we were so, both of us like were so ramped up in this scene, and he grabbed me and I went to sort of move his hand off, and he ended up hitting me in the face. But it was good because our adrenaline was up and we were sort of really in it, you know. I don't recommend ever hitting anyone in an audition, by the way, but I guess he'd already got the part at that point, so he could get away with it.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I don't know, you know, I think you can't, sometimes things, you're just right for it and it just happens. But one thing I did after that have to meet Ron, and it was over the weekend. So maybe I did that on a Thursday and I was meeting Ron on Monday, and I read the book that weekend, which is, you know, over 1,000 pages. I spent doing nothing else but those 3 days reading that book, because I wanted to make sure when I got that meeting that I knew what I was going to be talking about, and I knew the character. So that's one of the things, you know, you have to put in that extra bit of work, I think.